myself. That's all right. Genesis chapter number 16. Genesis 16. Oh, there we go. A little loud. We left off last week with Abram, and he's been promised the son. We'll say it that way. So we're going to pick up a short time after, in chapter 16. And I want us to look at, because the reason I say this, I think that what we're going to read tonight, we all do. Every single person in this room. If you haven't done it, you will do it at some point or another, which is in light of God's plan for our lives, whatever that may be or whatever that may mean. We try to do things our own way. Every single person here at some point or another, when it comes to God's plan, will try to do things our way. We may even try to line up with his plan, as we're going to see tonight. But oftentimes, we get in the way. I'm trying to say it without sounding disrespectful. There's times in our lives when we're praying for things, and God it feels like he's slow. It's not to be disrespectful. It's just what it feels like to us. Obviously, he's not slow, but whatever it may be. You could be praying for somebody to be healed, for something good, and it may even be that we know God is going to do it. But we want to interject our own selves into the equation of doing it, and that's not rebellious necessarily. I'm trying to give a good example. Like if you're praying for a child that's strayed from God, and we're praying for them to return, and or a marriage that's broken, and you're praying for God to heal it, praying for doors to open in your career, whatever it may be, and we want to put ourselves in it and do something on our own, and that's not rebellious. It's not really unbelief that we don't trust God. In that sense, you're almost longing for it to happen, if you would. Like as an example, if you're praying for the child to come back to God, you long for it to happen, and we want to get involved. And we're going to see today that I'd like to say it this way: that there's a space between God's promised something and God fulfills something. And it's this space in the middle that sometimes feels like it takes forever. And that's where y'all will know this, we may not come out and say it. We would say it this way: maybe God needs my help here. And I know it sounds silly for us to think and say God needs my help, but he's promised something, he's going to fulfill it. But in here, the wait is long, and it's like, hey, if I do this, that would just help God out. That's not a good thing, and that's what we're going to look at. It's always when we try things our own way, because that's ultimately what that is. I'm not going to say it's not his plan, but we're going to see it can cause a mess. It's a mess. Like for us to try to accomplish God's will or God's end of things through our own power and our own means is never going to end good. We're going to see through this chapter, we're going to read all six, we're going to read them in part, but that it exposes our shortcuts. It will reveal to us that God is still faithful, even when we're disobedient and rebel, if you will, and he calls us back to trust him. So I'm going to say this, and then we're going to start going through it. That when God promises something, we have to receive it his way. Obviously we know the story of Abram and Sarah. Last week we saw that God has promised him again a son. He's promised to bless him, and he's going to have descendants that outnumber the stars. And he promised him specifically, you're going to have a son. This man will not be your heir. He will come from you. And now we're getting to this point where it's not happening fast enough. So that's what we're going to pick up. We're going to pick up, I'm going to read the first 3 verses. Genesis chapter 16, the Bible says, Now Sarai, Abram's wife, had borne him no children. And she had an Egyptian maid whose name was Hagar. So Sarai said to Abram, Now behold, the Lord has prevented me from bearing children. Please go into my maid. Perhaps I will obtain children through her. And Abram listened to the voice of Sarai. And Abram had lived 10 years in the land of Canaan. Abram's wife Sarai took Hagar the Egyptian, her maid, and gave her to her husband Abram as his wife. So we left off last week with the promise. I'm paraphrasing the promise, but I'm going to give you a son. Your heir will come from you, and it's not going to be this descendant, cousin, whoever it is. You're going to have a son. And then chapter 16 opens with a heavy, heavy statement, really. Sarah, Abram's wife, had borne him no children. Not only it's not like he's had a bunch of daughters. It's not like there's dozens and dozens of girls in the picture, and it's just he's not had a son yet. It's God's promised these things, and it's not happening. It carries a sense of longing, like we want children, and for what it is, it's years of disappointment. Like they're waiting on God's promise to come true, and we don't have any children. How is it going to be as numerous as the stars? And God promised it. They know. They believe God. They trust him for sure. That's why the statement starts out that way. She's borne him no children. We could even, not to add to scripture, but we could say yet, because we know the end of the story. But it feels to them, and we've all been there, not maybe in this sense, but like the promise is delayed. Like God's gotten so busy doing something else that he's forgotten Abram and Sarah, and he's forgotten what he's promised to do. So what happens is, in human nature, in her flesh and his flesh, temptation to take control and help God starts creeping in. And it starts to grow stronger and stronger. And here's the thing, when God seems slow to act, we start to justify our shortcuts. She says something in verse 2. Sarah said to Abram, Behold, the Lord has prevented me from bearing children. It's nothing wrong with me, Abram. He stopped it. She's starting to justify her line of thinking. God's caused this. He's the one that made the promise. He can do anything. He's preventing this from happening. She's taking his delay for denial. She's assumed in her own mind, and it's not to blame her because they're both going to be guilty here very soon. Since God hasn't acted yet, he's not going to act at all. He's not acted yet, so he's not going to act at all. So she starts to reason with herself. Okay, well, God bless his hard work. He wants me to take initiative. This is how God intends to fulfill the promise. You notice what she's starting to talk. She's starting to put words in God's mouth, if you will. Maybe the end will justify the means. And we do the same thing. Every single one of us do the same thing. When God seems to act slow, we start to come up with our own solutions, like we start thinking of our own timeline. We start to convince ourselves that my plan is actually God's plan. Even though we know good and well from the first part that it is not his plan. His plan is clear for us. We see the beginning. We know what the end looks like. In the middle, we're just like, I've got to get there. So we start, and again, we've started justifying it because God's slow, it seems like. And then we start to rationalize our plans using spiritual words and language. And to be fair, I'm going to be fair to Sarah. it's not a pagan idea what she's coming up with here. It's not rebellious. It would be rebellious in our culture, but in her culture, this is acceptable. Like, to be fair, it's not going to happen in America. We're all like, she what? This was the norm. Like, this wasn't unheard of. It's logical for her. I can't have kids. I've got a maid that can. It's strategy for her. This is in their time and in their culture, this plan makes perfect sense. But there's one problem. It's her plan. And to be fair, it's Abram's plan too, ultimately, but it's their plan. There's one key part of there's one person missing from the plan. And it's God. And this is where we today have to be careful. Just because it's accepted culturally does not make it spiritually right. And I mean that. Like, just because it's accepted around the world doesn't mean that it's right. All right, and then here we go. This is where the things change. Abram listens to her. That sounds wrong. He listened to his wife. Man, that's not what it means. There's two voices talking to him. There's God saying, I am going to give you a son. And then here's Sarai. She says, God's prevented this. And at the end of verse 2, and Abram listened to the voice of Sarai. You know, it reminds me of a very similar conversation in Eden. That Adam listens to Eve instead of listening to God. Here's the thing. It's not because women shouldn't speak, but it's because God's voice should always be first. If Sarai had echoed exactly what God said, there's nothing wrong. If Eve was telling Adam exactly what God has said, there's nothing wrong. But now we're starting to see there's this picture that Abram has heard the promise from God directly. He's seen God's faithfulness. He, as we've seen in chapter 15, he believed God, and it was counted to him as righteousness. But in this moment, we're 3 verses into the next chapter, in this moment, he listens to the voice of logic rather than the voice of God. Here's the thing. Oftentimes, that voice and that solution looks harmless. They've been there 10 years. She's not had kids. She's right. She's right. But what we're getting ready to see is oftentimes a clever idea that is accepted culturally will become a disaster. Here's the question we have to ask ourselves. In our lives, where are we tempted to help God? I laugh, not because we all get tempted that way, because it's foolish to think that we can help God do anything. Like, are we tired of waiting on him? And there's a million areas it could be. Is it a financial thing? Is it a relationship? Is it ministry that we're trying to fix? There's a million things. So here's the idea. When we take control, the consequences aren't contained anymore. They will start spreading like wildfire. When we take control, problems happen, problems come, and you never intend it. Verse 4. He went into Hagar, and she conceived. And when she saw that she had conceived, her mistress was despised in her sight. Sarai said to Abram, May the wrong done me be upon you. I gave my maid into your arms, but when she saw that she had conceived, I was despised in her sight. May the Lord judge between you and me. But Abram said to Sarai, Behold, your maid is in your power. Do to her what is good in your sight. So Sarai treated her harshly, and she fled from her presence. the minute or the moment that Hagar conceives, the relationship is shredded. The second it happens, what was a normal relationship, whether it be from maid and lady and husband, is shredded to pieces. Hagar despised Sarah. Sarah blames Abram. Abram withdraws. Sarah mistreats Hagar. Hagar flees. She leaves. You know what? Everybody got hurt. Everybody's hurt. Here's the other side of it. Nobody's satisfied. The promise that God had made is no closer than it was before. This is what happens when we try to secure God's blessing and promise through our own efforts. It's, in a sense, this is what happens. Like sin multiplies pain every time. When we try to fix God's plan, which still sounds silly to even say, when we try to fix God's plan, we break our relationships. Like a shortcut doesn't just affect us. It affects people around us. The shortcut affected 3 people so far. It's going to affect a whole lot more, and we're going to see that later. But look what happens. Jealousy arises. Resentment happens. The blame changes from him to her to her to her, and distance is now entered, and there's no more trust. And Abram, being the godly man and leader that he is, says, do to her what's good in your sight. Doesn't matter what I say, you do what's right. And I'm laughing because he's the leader. And he says, you deal with her. He surrendered to her in that sense. When he should have stepped forward and said, hey, we've already made a mess. Let's talk about this. He steps backwards and says, you deal with it. You deal with it. He should have been present, and he steps away. He was silent when he should have been vocal. And then Sarah mistreats Hagar. She treated her harshly. The one who was supposed to be blessed through Abram's family is now running from it. She leaves. She flees. This is the hard one for us to hear because we all still want to insert ourselves in the plan. When we make shortcuts, people get hurt. And we can say that, and that can be a generic statement, but there's more to it. When we make shortcuts and try to change or fix God's plan, people get hurt, and oftentimes it's the people that we're trying to help or that we're trying to bless, if you will. Like when we take control of the plan, it's not our plan. When we take control of the plan, somebody pays the price. And we have to ask ourselves, are there places where in my past that I have come up with solutions and it's created more problems than good? Or I've harmed more than I've helped? And if so, it's human nature. Most of us can say that. This is a picture. It's not the story of Abram and Sarah. It's a picture of Christians everywhere. But here's the thing. The story doesn't end here. Because right now it's bad. Man, wife, handmaid. Now she's his wife too. She's pregnant. They hate each other. She's left because she's getting treated unfairly. And we're going to see that she runs. She runs a long way. So I'm going to read verse 7. I'll just read through the end of the chapter. We can come back and go over it. Verse 7. Now the angel of the Lord found her, speaking of Hagar, by a spring of water in the wilderness, by the spring on the way to Shur. And he said, Hagar, Sarah's maid, where have you come from and where are you going? And she said, I am fleeing from the presence of my mistress Sarah. Then the angel of the Lord said to her, return to your mistress and submit yourself to her authority. Moreover, the angel of the Lord said to her, I will greatly multiply your descendants, so that they will be too many to count. The angel of the Lord said to her further, behold, you are with child, and you will bear a son, and you shall call his name Ishmael, because the Lord has given heed to your affliction. He'll be a wild donkey of a man. His hand will be against everyone, and everyone's hand will be against him. And he will live to the east of all his brothers. Then she called the name of the Lord. Then she called the name of the Lord, who spoke to her. You are a God who sees. For she said, have I even remained alive here after seeing him? Now here we go. I'm going to try to pronounce this. Therefore, the well was called Berlahairoi. Behold, it is between Kadesh and Bered. And Hagar bore Abram a son. And Abram called the name of his son, whom Hagar bore, Ishmael. Abram was 86 years old when Hagar bore Ishmael to him. So there's a lot in that little passage. We've just ended with failure. I'm going to use the term, and I mean it as respectfully as I can. It's a love triangle, as we would know it. But it's a legal one in the time. It's accepted in the time, but it's failure. That is failure. It is what it is. They didn't trust God. They say they trust God. He's made a promise. They didn't trust him. And they failed. But even when we fail, even when they failed, God still sees, God still hears, and God still redeems. Like this pregnant maid runs into the wilderness. Like we don't fathom that. Like we can to a point, but like fleeing into the wilderness then as opposed to now, like we could run out in the woods or run up through Bays Mountain for a while, but we got somewhere to come back to. You don't have to go far off of Bays Mountain to see some lights and maybe a road and a vehicle and even a house, but you got to put yourself in her shoes for a minute. She is the maid, which means she is the servant. Which, to be fair, not just call it what it is, especially in the time, she's a woman. And in that time, she's a second-class citizen, if you will. So she's really third or fourth class. And she's pregnant. And she runs into the wilderness alone. She's been mistreated. We don't know what that means. We can use our own. She could have been. I don't want to suggest it, but it makes sense. She could have been smacked. And she runs. She's sitting by this well, if you will, alone, in the wilderness like we can't fathom. There's no lights around. And all of a sudden, the angel of the Lord finds her. And she's sitting by this spring. Oh, that wasn't an accident. Never in Scripture, when you see that the angel of the Lord appears, was it an accident. We'll go a step further. Ready? Oftentimes, and I believe so even in this case, when you see the term the angel of the Lord in Scripture, it's referring to Jesus pre-incarnate in the Old Testament. He appears, and it's not a coincidence. It wasn't because he just happened to be going by the well that day. He found her. She was running. She was hiding in the wilderness, and he finds her. Now, I'm telling you all that story behind her because here's the idea behind it. Hagar is not a covenant bearer. She wasn't the chosen vessel. She's not the one that the promise is going to come through. We all know the end of the story. She's not the one. But she's not forgotten. Like, God sees the people that we overlook a lot of the time. And I mean, like I've said it from here before, and you all will know what I mean. And there are people that we have passed by having a gospel conversation with. We do that every day. I mean, I know that, but there are times, and you all will know it, you've passed by having a gospel conversation with that person because God's not going to save them. And you know what I mean. You know, you can picture a person in your mind and you can go, yeah. We know God can save them. We all know that, but God's not going to save them. Look at them. Look how they're acting. And we ignore them. But God still sees them, even when we overlook them. Hagar is one person. She's alone in the wilderness, and God meets her in this desert. And I want you to notice something. Verse 8, he said, Hagar. He called her by her name, which is a unique thing to see. And he acknowledges that she's suffering. He acknowledges all that, and he starts to talk into her mess. He starts to talk to her about it. Like, he asks her, where have you come from? Where are you going? I'm fleeing from the presence. And he tells her, return, submit. She's in the middle of a mess. I mean, this is a bad situation. You notice what God didn't say? And I use God because I do believe it is the pre-incarnate Jesus here. Do you notice what he didn't do? He didn't say, get all dressed up and come back. He didn't wait for her to get back to the right place to speak to her. He meets her in the wrong place. Like that's a big deal, guys. And we all say that, like, when God saves us, we weren't looking for God, he was looking for us. Clearly, we were lost, he wasn't. It's the same picture here. He meets her in the wrong place. She should have never been there. But he finds her there. And he doesn't wait for her to fix the situation. He tells her how to fix it. And you know what? To be fair, that's probably not the news she wanted to hear. Nobody likes to hear that. She's been treated harshly. Hey, you need to go back. What? I'm pregnant, and she treated me bad. Yeah, but you need to go back, and then you need to submit to her authority. What? What? That's crazy. But he speaks directly into that situation. You need to go back, but look what's going to happen. Submit to her authority, and I'm going to greatly multiply your descendants too. He doesn't wait. This is a big deal. He doesn't wait for her to return to Abram's house. He finds her in the wilderness and tells her, you're going to have a son. You're going to name him Ishmael. You know what that means? God hears. God hears the cries of the oppressed person. He hears the cries of the forgotten, the wounded. He hears the cries of those that are caught in the consequence of a sin that's not theirs. And then he reveals himself. This is the big one here. He tells her what to do. He tells her, you need to go back, you need to submit yourself, you're going to have a son, you're going to name him this. And she replies with one of the most beautiful things that you can reply with. She called the name of the Lord who spoke to her. You are a God who sees. You are a God who sees. For she said, have I even remained alive here after seeing him? You are a God who sees me. In a sense, she's given God a name now. And then I want you to notice, it wasn't Abram, it wasn't Moses, it wasn't David, it was this lady, who was a nothing. If there was a nobody in Scripture at this point, it's her. She's the second wife of a guy and she's pregnant, and the first wife is mad. She's not, this is bad. She's the runaway servant girl. Abram and Sarah have failed. And they failed bad. And she suffered for it. And God is faithful. Like, we, at times, and some of us may still be currently, we have lived and we may be living with consequences in our lives of our own shortcuts in God's plan. All of us. You may be suffering because somebody else's shortcut. Or you have in the past. But here's the thing. God sees and meets us still in the wilderness. Like, the story we're reading isn't about Abram and Sarah. It's really not. It's a parable, for one, of the gospel itself. Because in Galatians 4, Paul brings up this exact story. He brings up Hagar, and he's talking about her. And I'm going to give you what he's talking about in a nutshell, and then we'll explain it. Paul's idea or his line is that God's promise has come by grace, not effort. They come by grace alone and not human effort. In Galatians 4, Paul mentions Hagar, and she's representing human effort. She is. She's trying to secure God's blessing or it's us trying to secure God's blessings by our own strength. That's Hagar. Sarah represents God's miraculous provision, a child born by divine promise. But it's a picture of the gospel, because if I asked anybody in this room, how hard do you have to work to be saved? There's not an answer you can give me. You can't. You could name every good work that you have ever done. And you could fill these walls up with it. You ready? And this is where it gets crazy. You can just imagine these walls are full of writing of every good work that you've ever done for salvation. And the minute I ask the question, have you ever sinned? And you say yes, they've immediately been erased, and your good works are nothing. That's human effort. That's how far your human effort for salvation gets you. Like, you cannot earn salvation. There's nothing you can do to earn it. You can't earn God's favor. See, that's a crazy thought too. Like, you can't earn grace. You can't build your own righteousness. We know, Isaiah tells us what our works of righteousness are. Filthy rags. Think about that. Salvation isn't achieved by any effort on the human part. God's promises are fulfilled by his power and his power alone. We're going to see that Sarah does have a son. We all know the story, I hope. It's Isaac. Isaac is born by grace, not strategy. Because you know what? There's a key phrase that we all know, that Sarah laughed. Why'd she laugh? Because she's old. I'm going to pick. I'm going to call some lady out. Who's the oldest lady here tonight? Raise your hand. Y'all know who it is. I don't know. It's Alicia. Okay. I'm not going to make you say it, but I'll do it this way. Any ladies in here over 70? Okay, there's a few. Any ladies in here over 80? I know the answer is no. So you ladies over 70. If you... any of the three, I trust y'all enough to do this. If you were to get a phone call from your doctor tomorrow that says, hey, you're going to be pregnant in a year, y'all would probably laugh too. The reason I'm saying that is it doesn't happen. The only way that could happen is by God's grace. The reason she laughed is because that's absurd to hear, that she's going to have a child in old age. It wasn't strategy. It was a miracle of God. He didn't manipulate anything. He promised. It didn't matter. Here's the thing. I want you to see the grace of God gives them Isaac. If it was based on human performance, they messed up real bad right here. Bad enough that he's not going to keep the promise. They can't earn it. The picture of the gospel. We don't have to work to be saved. We don't have to work to be saved. That's the idea. That's the freedom the gospel gives. You don't have to manipulate the outcome of anything. You don't have to force God's hand. Please don't try to force God's hand. You don't have to build your own righteousness. Good thing, because we can't. But to be saved means to be born again. But not of human will, but of the will of God. God accomplishes through his grace what we never could, ever. He fulfills what we never would fulfill. He secures what we can never, ever secure on our own. And then here's the other side of it. We are known as Christians as the children of promise. Children of promise wait. We trust and we walk by faith. There are going to be times, and I mean this, that we're going to be just like Abram and Sarah. That it just feels like God is dragging his feet. He's dragging his feet, but we wait. We trust him. in our standard, again, we know we don't fathom it, but God is not bound by time. She's like, God, I'm old. And Abram's old. Yeah, you're going to have a child. And she laughs. But he's not bound by time. He's like, what's old? What is old? When you are the creator of what's old? Trust and wait. Trust and wait. That's it. I got to keep going. We'll hurry. This isn't an ancient story about ancient people making mistakes. Even though there are ancient people that have made mistakes. This is a mirror held up to the human heart. In our lives, we are going to have promises from God. We're going to be praying to God at different times, and we will want to interject our own plans. It's easy to stand here when it's not me and go, don't. Like, when you're tired of waiting, just wait a little longer. When you're tired of here, let's do it a different way. I'll even go this route. When you're tired of waiting, talk to God about that. Talk to God about it. And then wait. Like, don't come up with plan B. Like, the idea for us as believers is to lay down the shortcuts. They're not shortcuts. In fact, we're going to see this, if most of us know the story of what's getting ready to happen over the course of the next several chapters in Genesis. This creates a fiasco. And it's going to keep creating a fiasco on down the line. Our strategies aren't smart. Lay them down and quit attempting to force God's hand. He will achieve his promise in his time. Here's the idea. We are children of promise. When we feel like he doesn't see us, I assure you we are seen. Hagar was seen and she thought she was hiding in the wilderness. She'd gotten away. She's hiding. All of a sudden the angel of the Lord appears. Hey, Hagar. Not only does he address her by her name, he addresses her by her job. Hagar, Sarah's handmaid. You're seen, you were known, you were heard. And here's the idea for us as God's children. We are held. We are held by a God who keeps he is bound by his word. Not through anything that we do, but through his faithfulness. Amen? I'm going to stop there. We keep going. All right. Prayer requests.